Hello, this is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files here. So this is a bit of a notice to people. The episode of this show, Canada, Palestine, the War on Zionism, was recorded just a couple of hours before the University of Toronto encampment made the decision to voluntarily take the encampment down, the encampment for Palestine. So just remember that the some of the topics at the end are in that context, especially specifically about the encampment. So please just come at it with that context. Very important to understand. Anyways, I'll take you into the episode now. Hello there, this is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. I am here co-hosting the latest episode of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism, with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, Laith, there's been so much going on with the axis of resistance really in this last week or two. So in terms of the battles, I think is the starting point. What's been the situation there? I mean, I think obviously Lebanon is a major likely front of desperate Zionist aggression, but I want to give you the purview to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on the ground in Gaza, the Zionists have been suffering the largest amounts of casualties since the beginning of the war. We saw videos coming out yesterday from Shujaiya in the north, which supposedly was cleansed of Hamas. This is what the Israeli military has claimed before. But we saw videos of the destruction of multiple armored vehicles. Even we saw a video of two Palestinian resistance fighters going directly to a tank, putting bombs on it and running away and blowing it up. Similarly, in the south of Gaza, around the Rafah area, there in the Jabalia area, there's been huge battles. Up until now, the Israelis have admitted over the last 48 hours, at least 12 Israeli soldiers in the casualties in that battle. So this shows us that clearly the Zionists have not been able to win the ground battle, and they will not win the ground battle. They continue to attack hospitals and shelters. As we saw yesterday, they ordered the evacuation of the European hospital, and it's the last hospital in the north of Gaza that is still functioning. And so that's on the ground in Gaza. In the front in the north of Palestine with the south of Lebanon, again, we saw huge escalations over the last 2 weeks since we spoke. Uh, just 48 hours ago, Hezbollah attacked the major air defense base, control base in the north of Palestine. This is amongst many other huge targets that it hit over the last 2 weeks. And there's been, an increase in the size of the weapons used and the waves of weapons. So now we used to see one drone at a time fly out. Now we're seeing swarms of drones flying to hit targets. And because of the destruction of the majority of the Israeli air defenses and radars in the north of Palestine over the last 7, 8 months, the drones and missiles are reaching their targets sometimes without even any sirens blaring. So clearly they were not even noticed by the systems. And so that shows you how the ground in North Palestine and in the Syrian occupied Golan is now very soft and ripe for picking, basically. So in a situation of a full-out war, many analysts, including former Israeli chiefs of staff and heads of Mossad, have said if there's a full-out war with Hezbollah, that the Hezb would actually liberate all of North Palestine within 24 hours. This is Israeli assessments of the situation. And finally, on the front of Yemen, we saw the Yemenis, uh, showcase new weapons, including two different suicide drone boats, titled Tufan, which means the flood. And we saw them release videos of these drone ships, boats, maneuvering and hitting stationary targets in the water. And then we saw them release videos of them hitting multiple merchant ships that were going to the Zionist colony and sinking them. And they also released videos of their new hypersonic missile. And this, shows that Yemen is one of only 5 countries on this planet right now that have hypersonic missiles. Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and now Yemen. So, and they use already this hypersonic missile on a ship in the Mediterranean that was trying to go to the Zionist colony. So they've expanded their reach and they've introduced new weapons. And the spokesperson for the Yemeni forces, General Saria, said in the next 3 days, there's going to be another surprise. We don't know where it is, but given the scale of releases that they've shown us over the last week or two, we should be ready for something big.
Obviously, there was talk from the Canadian Foreign Minister Jolie about some evacuation potentially of Canadians from Lebanon, but we all know that Canada will back Israel in going ahead with that. So whatever obfuscation Canada plays, we know that's a farce. They support Israel die hard. So one of the things that's I think
Yeah,
important.
this is they're claiming they want to evacuate 45,000 or 55,000 Canadians from Lebanon. That they contacted all their citizens. I'm registered. My whole family is registered at the embassy. I didn't receive anything from the
Oh,
embassy. So it's clearly that even then the Canadian embassy is discriminating against who it will try to withdraw in a case of war. And my family are not part of that. And I'm wondering how many other Lebanese, Palestinian, whatever it is, dual citizens that are here, Canadian citizens that are on the territory of Lebanon, that haven't received any notification from their embassy because they're on the wrong side of the political aisle that the Canadian government has. And this is happening also for other nationalities. The American, German, and other embassies have reached out to their citizens, and they are also discriminating against anybody they think is critical of their own government.
okay. Well, in terms of the embassies and the programs, I mean, what comes to mind as well, of course, is with that program that Canada was supposed to have to bring Palestinians into Canada, and almost none, or I think none, or only a few being able to come in even. Yeah, it's not exactly like a unusual event. It's a trend of this kind of. Well, I mean, I've written the whole things about it, right? Canada wants the fascists, they want the anti-communists, they want these reactionary types, and they'll do everything they can to get them to the country. But people that don't go on the right side of the political aisle, don't support imperialism, don't support colonialism, they're going to get a lot rougher of a ride, right? This has been going on since the 40s, so past World War II, really, and different forms, but the end goal has never really changed.
Yes, yes. And you look at what's happening on the ground, really, even here in Lebanon, you see the American, Germans, and others actually smuggling in weapons to the country, and we don't know who they're handing them over to. So in a situation of a full-out war, we should be expecting actually the NATO US empire alliance to be participating directly in a war against Lebanon, maybe even an invasion of Palestine and Lebanon to save off the total collapse of the Zionist colony.
Now, sorry, I have to jump in because the weapons. coming in to the country. Now, that's not exactly a new thing either, from my understanding. Like, I think back to Rwanda, for example. But do you have any ideas on how that's coming in, or like what made you aware of that?
Yeah, so number one, a few months ago, actually, the Dutch embassy security staff were caught in the Dahi, and that's basically the southern suburb of Beirut, which is dubbed as a Hezbollah stronghold. They were caught there with weapons inside their cars. And when they were confronted about why are they carrying all these weapons with them, they claimed that they were doing exercises and they were distributing weapons to their own civilians, their own citizens that are residing apparently in the Lahir, which is doesn't make any sense, obviously, and that they're preparing and training for an eventuality where they have to withdraw their own citizens from the Lahir. So none of it makes sense, obviously, what they were claiming.
Yeah.
So it's clearly that they were trying to deliver weapons to who we don't know. Similarly, last week there was a big story, the Zionist and claiming that Beirut airport is being used by Hezbollah to
Of course, you were
smuggle.
there. You went there for
Yes,
the tour.
yes, to smuggle and store missiles. So I went there, and of course there was no missiles, no nothing coming in, and it was a tour organized by the Minister of Information, Minister of Transportation of Lebanon, and they invited all these ambassadors, and which arrived, except the American and the British ambassador who didn't show up, although the Telegraph, the British newspaper, was the one that wrote this story. While I was there, there was at least two American military freight planes that landed in the airport. And it's been now 8 months that we are seeing this almost on every couple of days, there's American military transport planes that arrive and their weapons just get distributed. I don't know to who. Obviously, there's multiple possibilities. You have the sleeper cells of the Wahhabi death squads like Al Qaeda and ISIS. You have also the Phalange, the Christian supremacists of the Kataib and the
Yeah, I
Lebanese
was thinking
forces.
I was th my thought immediately was, oh no, they're gonna try to do another they're gonna try to inflame another basically civil war, i.e. proxy, right, attacks. So
Yes, that's basically their. If in the situation of a bigger war, they need to do two things. One is the invasion, and the other is the internal civil war that they would like to inflame. Unfortunate for the West, unfortunate for the Lebanese people, all these forces like the Phalange, the Christian supremacist, and or the Wahhabi death squads, they have already been defeated multiple times by Hezbollah, and they don't have the ability right now to mobilize people on their side. But can they blow up one thing here and there? Can they kill civilians? Yes, they can. Can they defeat Hezbollah? They can't. On behalf of the West, they can't do that. They can't deliver what the West wants.
right. So I do want to shift some things in now to the Canadian situation because there's been some decent bit of stuff happening. I think the first thing to talk about on the case, on a good note at least, a brief good note, Goldie Gamari, the Ontario Progressive Conservative MPP, Iranian monarchist, and can't also called her Gusano. I think Gusano Goldie is a great nickname for her. So she's been kicked out because she met with Tommy Robinson, far right British activist. So yeah, basically hit that meeting with him, got her kicked out, which was remarkable because, of course, she couldn't have even been kicked out for all of her wild tweets before. But uh, I guess I'm surprised after all what she said online already that this was the line. That kind of was what surprised me. You would think it would have been some of the what she tweeted earlier. I remember going back and forth with her once, and she doesn't tweet in the way you expect from like an elected leader. Like you have fiery, yes, but there was almost like an immaturity or something to it, right? I mean, I think it's characteristic of these Iranian monarchists, Zionists, right? They're infantile, almost in terms they kind of have that core infantile nature, and I think it shows with someone like Gamari. So Gamari is gone, gone, gone from the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus. They are going to remain hardcore Zionists, and it's not going to change their policy at all. So speaking of that, The Breach had a good article, an investigation of theirs. Secretive committee in Ontario Ministry pushed crackdown on pro-Palestine activism. So within the Ontario Ministry of the Attorney General, there's a group very pro-Israel. They were trying to get more severe charges, keep charges going instead of them being dropped. So really just continuing the repression of Palestine protest. That's coming along in Ontario, Canada more generally. And on that front, and this is where you'll have some stuff to say as well, I'm sure. The the encampment, the Toronto University of Toronto encampment for Palestine. There is a decision handed out by the Ontario court. They granted the injunction to University of Toronto clearing pro-Palestine encampment. It's Wednesday, 6 p.m. That is Eastern time. That is going to be when the deadline is. Did I watched a little bit of the CBC to see, and it looks like the protesters haven't made their decision yet on whether to accept that or not. I personally don't expect them to accept it and just get it shut down. I visited the encampment a couple times when I was back in Toronto just briefly. And they definitely the personalities there just don't seem like the kind that would just meekly bow down to that. So I would be shocked if they did. But Laith, I think the thing for you is I want to hear your thoughts, but also tactics, 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 a thing or two about them, right? So, you had talked about the emphasis on the legality and the question of the court cases and parliament and that focus, right, of it not being overkill, right? I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, clearly some people thought that because the courts in Quebec ruled in against the destruction of the encampment or disbandment of the encampment in McGill University, that means, this is going to repeat in every court case. And traditionally, if you look at how the imperialist liberal legal system works, is that it allows you one win just to keep the belief that there is some balance or whatever it is in the legal system, that it actually is just this legal system. And then it hits you with 10 losses. You get one for 10. And that keeps people dragged into this legal system and believing that there is a way for them to win. Ultimately, there's no way that the legal system that was designed to protect the privilege of the elite, and that includes the Zionists and the imperialists and the colonialists, that it will destroy itself, okay, or destroy its masters. And so, yeah, they should have expected this defeat in the court. But, I didn't have time to read the whole decision of the judge. I read parts of it. And even in, though that the judge, ordered the disbandment of the camp or allowed U of T to do so, he still said that there is nothing hateful or illegal being done in the camp or any hate speech being said in the camp. He clearly also ruled that from the river to the sea or free Palestine, all of these are not anti-Jewish, these statements. Now, what should these demonstrators do, these students do? I mean, the whole purpose of all of this activism that is happening around Palestine is to end the genocide. Okay. And if your activism doesn't force these things, okay, then you shouldn't be doing it. And so right now, what will happen is the students will have they have two choices, obviously. Either they disband and go do something else, and or have a full on confrontation, put their bodies at risk and their freedom at risk for the Palestinian people's freedom and life. And in my opinion, they should actually take the beating, and but also they should be prepared. I don't think that just sitting down and taking a beating is also enough. They should be calling on the bigger, larger communities to come and defend them. They should take advantage of this moment to radicalize people, okay, and to pit the police, the enforcers of the unjust system in confrontation with the people. Uh, Call on the Nation of Islam, guys. Call on indigenous warriors, okay, the Mohawk Warrior Society to come with weapons. This is indigenous land. And we heard the Mohawk Nation and other indigenous warriors saying that they will be defending these things. Call them on to come. Let this become an issue that is not only about you getting beaten up in front of the cameras. So what if you get beaten up in front of the cameras? So what if you get arrested? Is that going to change anything? Is that going to force more contradictions within the state of Canada, the colony of Canada? No, it's not. They actually, having videos of the students being beaten up by the police to disband this encampment will be like porn for the Zionists. They'll be like having euphoria when they're watching the kids being beaten up. Will be the same for the elite in Canada. They will watch the police beat to pulp the students and enjoy it. Okay? So make that scene of confrontation a nightmare for the Zionists, a nightmare for the elite in Canada. Don't make it a joyous moment for them to watch. And that cannot happen without a direct, full-on confrontation. Let the police pay for their crimes. Okay, this is I went there on a rampage in my own rant, but this is what I think. I think it's enough with this liberal, nonviolent stuff.
Yeah, so I think we are coming into a very interesting time, especially because even with the encampments, I kind of think time is running out, right? To me, to be honest with you, the second I saw that U of T ruling, I said, well, goodbye to you're goodbye to no injunction on McGill. You're going to have injunction. This is going to be the first of a wave of injunctions that I think they'll get granted in the next month or two. I'm not saying that in a like people are screwed way, no. But to me, this is the signal that the encampments are now the elite has had enough of them, right? I think that's my opinion. Is that's the signal. So I think the big question is going to be yes, how do movements evolve and respond to this because I still think there's a problematic core belief in liberal democracy that guides a lot of the movements and the organizing. Um, Even on the liberal and even on the socialists element of Palestine organizing, I still think there's still that belief in liberal democracy or that pretension, having to try to maintain the pretension of it in the rhetoric and the activism. And I don't think that's going to work. So I think Rather than making big commentary, other than that, I'll simply say that there has to be adaptation. And it'll be really determining in terms of if these movements can help Palestine liberation cause, if they can adapt properly. And yes, like you said, not just, oh, we're gonna go get our heads beaten in, and it's gonna make the state look bad. The state's gonna like gleefully just, yeah, you're right. They're just gonna gleefully be like, woohoo, we beat the Palestinian evil, yada yada yada, whatever smears they're gonna use, right? They'll beat them. They'll National Post will be like, oh, good, the anti-Israel people paid a price, and the media will go on to the next day, right? You know, uh,
You know, I just want to say one thing. In 2002, when we shut down Netanyahu's speech at Concordia University, we didn't go in thinking that we want to be violent, okay? But when the police beat us and broke people's arms and legs, we fought back and we gave the Montreal police the beating of their life. They were so humiliated that for 20 years, they didn't dare touch one Palestinian demonstrator in any pro-Palestine demonstration after that day. 20 years. They would come to us, the police, and say anything you want. Okay? There was no, but now today, what is happening today? The pro-Palestinian encampments and demonstrations are getting beating on every time they go out, every time they do something. Nobody's fighting them back. So the police look at the whole pro-Palestine camp right now as sissies. Okay? These are people that are going to just be beaten and moved on. Nothing's going to happen. But when these cops know and see for sure that if they assault a Palestinian woman, man, child, or anyone standing with the Palestinian community, they will get the same beating back. They'll start thinking. They'll refuse the orders to do so. That's what was happening in the police in Montreal. They were refusing to confront the only demonstrations that would happen in Montreal where nobody would get arrested was the Palestinian demonstrations, where the police would hide 2 blocks away so they don't inflame us, was the Palestinian demonstrations. And that only happened because the police were put in their place on September 9th, 2002. And that lasted less than 20 years. These police in Canada have to be taught a lesson again. Otherwise, they'll be abusing people and they have the protection of the state behind them and they don't care whatever your opinion or my opinions are about that.
Speaking of the machinations of the Canadian state and Zionists, we have an interesting development around the Canadian Human Rights Commission. The new chief commissioner of this organization, Birju Datani, he's come under a lot of fire, targeted fire from Zionists. And there was one tweet from a number of years ago. He posted saying Palestinians are Warsaw ghetto prisoners of today, linking to an article of that name. That's what the Globe and Mail was saying. And ever since, he also posted this tweet about summer executions, comparing 2014 Israel actions and then executions by Nazis and so forth. So they have been hounding him ever since. He's tried to claim that he posted it because, oh, he thought it was ridiculous. How could they say this? But obviously, it was that he had pro-Palestinian sentiments in the past, and they found that. And now they're really trying to hound him out very hard. Uh, there, there was one. He apparently went to he spoke at a event run by Muslim Research Forum, and one of them was at a group that wanted to have basically like Islamic law, but he wasn't advocating that himself, right? So they've really hounded. Even there's former Justice Minister David Lametti that has also questioned his suitability now. This new figure. So it really kind of just showcases again on the Canadian state level that if there was even a history of pro-Palestine support, you're gonna get purged, right? So it just showcases, from this, it comes down from the political elites, right? It's Zionist Canadian political elites. And of course, you go down, there are servants in parliament, and then you go down to the provincial governments, and you go down, you're around the RCMP, you're around the police forces, you go down provincial, you go down to municipal, and it's that same element, that Zionist element, right? It's that constant trend, and you have to obey that trend if you want a mainstream career really of any kind, more and more at this point, right? So it's just a reality of the situation. And it is kind of comical how this guy is trying to worm his way out of things, Datani, it's basically pathetic, and it's not going to happen. And the guy's obviously, he's just going to get purged from
Yeah.
the position. I guess it's just an example more so of like kind of being a worm, right? And trying to just throw things under the bus and just try to beg and appease the Zionists doesn't work, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Continue.
And he has a position. This is what's crazy. Obviously, the tweets clearly show you, and his writings, that he understands Palestinian struggle, he understands Palestinian humanity, and correctly compares the Gaza extermination camp to the Warsaw extermination camp. And so his problem is that he's backing down. I mean, he is in a position that is no way anybody can get him out of. If he actually put his feet on the ground and went on the attack, what are they going to do? Okay, they're going to purge him anyways. At least go down in flames. Take down with you the whole state of Canada. Show the world that the state of Canada punishes its human rights workers if they open their mouth about Palestine. Don't be a weakling. In fact, I don't think they can take him out. How are they going to take him out? He should have.
Parliament. I believe it would be Parliament, but Parliament's out for the summer, right? So it's an interesting situation. They would have to even maybe call an emergency session, or something of the sort, if that's possible. Or they need to wait till the fall. So you are right. This guy very much could run it out, and it would be a pain to get him out right now, actually. So it
Yes.
just speaks to how little character the guy has to try to be such a worm and try to appease the Zionists in such a pathetic, sort of vile way.
Basically, I would say anyone that doesn't have a backbone, hmm, should not open their mouth on Palestine. Because people like him that open their mouth on Palestine end up harming the Palestinian people when they back down because they have no backbone. Okay. It's not a fashionable thing. It's not something that lightly somebody should touch. If you choose to speak about Palestine, be ready for the punishment you will get from the Zionists. Otherwise, don't open your mouth about Palestine. And I'm personally don't understand this guy, how he's backing down, because just a few weeks ago, maybe less than a month ago, the United Nations was talking about the Human Rights Commission in Canada, how problematic it is, the problems that it has, in backlog, and how it's treating Indigenous people, how it's treating others. And so, if he would go into a full confrontation with the state of Canada, he would have the United Nations behind him. This will become an international story. Up until now, there's nobody talking about this story, by the way, outside Canada. It should be a frontline headline story on all the Anglo, at least, countries. That the head of the Human Rights Commission in Canada is being hounded for showing some humanity when discussing the Palestinians.
So, I think this is a good place to leave off the episode. So, Campbell's viewers, this has been the latest episode of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. Thank you very much, Laith, for co-hosting the show with me yet again. And to the Cannon Fellows viewers, if you appreciate the this commentary and analysis from myself and Laith, well, you should consider supporting the journalism of both the Canada Files and Free Palestine TV. So, Laith, and of course to the Canada Files audience too, everybody that's seeing this, and of course you for being the co-host, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.